Hello and welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. So today, Graham, we're going all the way to Newport, Rhode Island.
Fantastic place. And one of the occupants of that area is a certain man called Chris Prefontaine. Now, forgive me, but that's a hell of a mouthful, Chris.
Well, you did it perfectly.
Yeah, but in bits. I mean, you could have probably put an advert between each syllable, but basically, no, I've got a Prefontaine. So, is it some kind? Is it from France or something like that?
Yeah, French Canadian.
Ah, right, okay. And it probably means somebody who's really smart at real estate, because that's your bag, isn't it?
That's it. Pre might be pre before everybody else was smart.
Right. Well, so in that case, there's an obvious question. How did you become smart before everybody else?
Yeah. Look, I've been at this 31 years, so we won't bore the audience, but I've touched a lot of the niches in real estate. And the crash of '08, I call it the debacle of '08 in the States, is what got us into what we do today, which is buying everything without banks, without money, without personal guarantees and things like that.
Without your own money, but presumably with money.
Actually, no. Good question. We don't raise money either. We buy everything owner financing or subject to existing financing or lease purchase. Those three ways they don't require.
That's really smart. Okay. All right. So let's sort of break this down, because the person that you're serving, anybody listening to this, is going to be interested in you because you tell us why. Why would somebody listening to this be really interested in Smart Real Estate Coach? It might seem obvious, but just tell us your reasoning why they should be interested in you.
Yeah, no, this is great because there's so many misconceptions about how to get their hands on real estate. I'm talking everyone around the world.
Yeah.
Because most people, like I did for my first 18 of 31, think, okay, go get a loan. Or like you said, go borrow money from someone or an entity and purchase real estate. That's conventional. That's what I thought. And I did it for years. So now we open up the ball game, we open up the court to absolutely everyone, if they want to learn a skill set, that can buy without having the cash or the credit. Because coming out of the crash, I didn't have that anymore. And so that's what really how this was born.
Okay, so treat certainly me as a real novice when it comes to this. So
we're both absolute novices in this.
Okay, but so in which case then, what we want to know is, all right, let's we're interested in buying or accessing property in the way in which you're going to teach people to make money. So you're going to buy it, flip it, and walk away with some money. Is that the plan, or one of the plans?
A piece of it. So we're gonna, no matter how of those three ways we procure it or control it, we're gonna exit it. And this is another huge market for everybody to tap into. We're gonna exit it with a rent to own exit. With who? With a buyer who today can't get a loan. They can't qualify for a loan today. It doesn't mean they can't over time. And we help them with that path to home ownership and to getting a mortgage eventually. And so that's who we serve after COVID, especially, but this has always been historically, but post-COVID, there's been a major demand for people that say, okay, I want to go my own business now. Great. But you're not financeable now, even worse. You're going to wait a few years to be financeable.
Today in the UK, and I know it's been happening in the States as well, but the central bank has hiked up the interest rate by three-quarters of a point. Yeah. So that's really going to hurt people. And so, but also for those people not yet with a mortgage, they might be thinking, thank God. However, I still need somewhere to live. So that type of person is going to be of interest to your clients. Yeah. Yeah.
They sadly think that, okay, 6 or 7 or 9 months ago, my family and I were going to buy a home. And now I'm out of the market. If I was borderline qualifying, because just like you guys, we have the interest rates are crazy. Yeah. So yes, we're going to help them find a path to home ownership by what? By letting them enter a home, not take ownership yet, with a rent-to-own vehicle while they qualify, or while they repair credit, or while they save more. The fact is they can enter as if they were owning and start capturing equity as if they owned, and not have to worry about that while they journey to get qualified. So many people try to get qualified, or they're renting and they say, oh, I'll wait till I get qualified. Well, this could be 2 years later. The market could totally change, good or bad or otherwise.
Sure. Isn't there a risk for your clients of taking people in who might say, yeah, I'll rent, okay, but I don't think I'll ever buy?
Yeah. Yes, if it's not done correctly. This is a very good question, Graham, because publicly, so this is not something speaking out of school, publicly, you'll see mentors and educators talk about the rent to own program. But when they talk about it in light of, I'll put a buyer in a home. I won't qualify them because who cares if they cash out? I'll just do it again if they default. Now, they might be okay legally with how they're set up, but morally and ethically, that's just no good in my book. So we have an inverse relationship with our buyers. We actually cash out anywhere between 97 and 90%. We have a very small default rate, like it's similar to government loans. That's how small our default rate is.
Wow. So what makes that happen then? Presumably a great deal of effort, sort of reassuring and, making them want to stay in this and develop their home. Presumably there's a lot of psychology that goes into making them feel really comfortable with you or your clients as vendors. I'm not quite sure if that's the right word.
Yeah. So us as a family company, we do this exact same thing that we teach investors. So but here's the thing. A lot of what you just referenced starts at the very beginning. My son, for example, is the buyer specialist and trains other students to do the same. And he looks for people that are true buyers, not I'm a renter and maybe someday I'll buy. They're going to default. It's a buyer who truly is a buyer who just needs time. There's a big difference. So they have a down payment. They have the cash flow. They have a good job. Everything's in place. They just need time. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And I guess presumably you're you said right around the world, but let's just stick with the United States. I mean, are there hot spots that are better for you than other areas?
Yeah, this is good. I mean, typically two things come to mind. When I came out of the crash, I built this to thrive in any market, but that doesn't mean it's always easy, right?
No.
A market that's a little bit outside of a hustle bustle city, so a little bit outskirts, number one. Number two, is it easier when the market slows down a little bit like right now? Yeah, because for the third time in 50 years, at least in the States, we have an affordability crisis again with the interest rates. And we're not even at our average 50-year rate. So it's going to get worse. And that means the seller demand has come down. So is it easier now to talk to a seller and solve problems? Yeah, a lot easier.
I have a client in Orlando, and they basically are about building affordable properties. They do 3D printing, and that's what their thing's going to be, building effectively low cost, but single family sort of homes that are low cost. Now, that's their plan. But in the research for them, found out that in America, I think you're 5 million properties short of what you need right now. That's an awful lot of people who cannot get into properties. So the ones that you get your hands on, I guess you can afford to be a little bit picky.
Yeah, we are. We tend to deal with nicer homes, move-in ready homes. We can deal with anything, but nicer homes, move-in ready homes, and homes that are either we're on the market and not selling now. Yes. This is what we call expired listings in any market, right? Up, down, or sideways, but they're plentiful now. And the second thing that I love, and I don't know the exact stat in the UK, but in the United States is about 30% to 33% of the properties are free and clear, and they're not on the market necessarily. So we look, speaking with them, my office building, I'm not there today, but my office building right down the street was bought with this very method. Go and speak with a niched list of free and clear property owners who are able to do and willing and open and anxious to do owner financing versus selling outright. And that's who we speak with. So I bought that building.
Wow. So in other words, it really is about knowledge of certain parts of the real estate market that you obviously have an awful lot of knowledge of. You're then you're coaching people to spot that, presumably in their own territories. I suppose you can't be expert in absolutely every territory in the United States, a big place, and for the rest of the world for that matter. So presumably you almost have to, I like that idea of actually just outside a main city. I mean, Kevin, you kind of fit that profile. Certainly I do as well. We're, 20 miles or so outside of, in our case, Leeds, which is the major capital in the rest of the north of England, and there is Newcastle further up, but he supports Newcastle. They don't really amount to much, to be honest with you, Chris. You've probably never heard of them. But Leeds United, of course, and Leeds is world famous, especially with Americans. But just on the outskirts of that, presumably that formula works pretty much any territory.
Yeah, and to your earlier point, Graham, I like to tell people, like, unlike multifamily and people teach you got to go different pockets of the world, I just teach 50 miles radius around where you are, unless you got to go a little bit from the outskirts or you're in a desolate area. But generally speaking, there's more business than you could possibly handle for any one individual within that radius, the way we buy. So whereas a fix and flip or a wholesale investor right now might be a little bit of a panic, they're actually coming to us saying, hey, how can we partner? What we do is in very high demand right now. Like in 31 years of being in the business, I haven't seen it this conducive to creative real estate.
So is your strength really about finding the person who's going to occupy the property, or is it equally or more so in actually identifying the property?
Well, let me know if I answer to what you asked. The harder part of the formula here, buyer and seller, is finding the property, the skill set to develop to the scripts to speak with them properly and solve problems. Once you have that property, the disposition of it is easier. I won't ever say easy, but it's simple because there's not a lot of people offering creative real estate terms, owner financing, lease purchase. They're just not. So 80-ish% of the market at any one time, and it's getting worse, can't qualify for a loan. If you talk to top loan officers, mortgage brokers, they'll tell you they close less than 16% qualification wise. That's pretty low. So we have all of the other market. Now, it's not that all of the other market is good, but within that are some good buyers that deserve a pathway to getting ready.
And you've obviously built this business because you've identified this niche. We call it a niche over here, Chris. I'm sorry if I'm speaking French to you, but I know you say niches over there and things like that. But however, in this niche, you have identified this niche for, and you're going to help people become, real estate mavens to actually go and do their stuff, identifying the property, identifying the buyer. This is obviously something that just a few people can do, do you think, in your estimation, or is it something that most people can do?
All right, I would answer that a little differently. My 10,000 foot view answer is most can if they're coachable and willing to learn. Is society full of people that get up every day, no matter how hard it is and how long it takes, does whatever it takes to accomplish their goals? No, it's not reality. No. But if they're willing to learn it, yes. This has been around. I was saying to Kevin before we all jumped on, this has been around since 1600s. This technique of owner financing. I read about that. You mentioned the mansions on Bellevue. Well, Vanderbilt's was a book written by Anderson Cooper. He talks about his family buying real estate in New York City, owner financing in the 1600s, pre-banking. So it's been around. It's just that we've wrapped a system around it to bring that to fruition. That's all.
So if Kevin's probably got this already, but because I'm a little bit behind him usually on these things, and I have to sort of ask the question that gets the answer. Owner financing, just walk us through that again so we kind of get it.
Yeah, sure. So I'll use my building as an example. Gentleman owed nothing and was seeking to find a buyer who would do owner financing versus bringing a loan to the table and closing them out. Why? Because people say, well, how do you convince the seller? No, I don't convince. I look for a problem to solve or a goal to accomplish that the market can't. And in his case, it was, and I'll say how it works. In his case, it was, I want some estate planning for my wife and my son to have a check every month without worrying about a building. I want some tax planning and not have to pay that all up front, and just part of his whole estate. So then what does it mean for owner financing if someone's new? His name was Alan. Alan, I make the payments to him and his family every month instead of a bank. That's all it is. And so on my settlement statement, when I purchased, there was no new money coming to the table by way of a bank. It was just owner financing in his name, and he gets a check every month. The amount of underwriting, and I can't stand banks for that reason. The amount of underwriting I did avoid is immense. I didn't have to go through any of that. It was a handshake and two attorneys and done. So owner financing is simple. The seller steps in instead of a bank. That's all.
So I have a property. I want some money from that property. I might have more than one property. Presumably, still got to live in a property, so I've got another house. Maybe a parent or whatever that you've inherited or whatever. What am I going to do with it? You come along, and I say, "Well, I've got this property. I'm not really somebody who looks after property, but you've got this great idea of turning that property into income that comes into our house on a regular basis, and will do so probably long after I've gone." Because if you're, shall we say, in your 60s now, and it's going to be a 30-year thing, well, you might be there, you might not be. But the point is that money's going to come into your estate that maybe your kids or other people associated with it will get.
Right.
So you might never see the full value of the property, but you're getting regular income. Have I more or less got that?
You've got it. Yeah. And then the other advantage that I didn't mention is we can always pay full price if the term is right, if we can go out far enough. And sometimes we can even pay a premium. Why?
Right.
Most of the time when we're buying, we're structuring owner financing whereby we're paying monthly principal only payments, no interest. And sometimes there's a combination, but we always try to start at least with principal only. So picture that from a standpoint of recession sort of hedge, where you're just hitting principal every single month. And that's what we did. That's what we do on most properties, like 98%.
But that presumably means that you've tapped up the price of the property to do that. Otherwise, where's the margin?
That's the point. We can. And in my mind, I usually teach the student, and I in practice do, every year they'll extend it. In theory, I don't mind adding 1, 2, or 3 months worth of principal payments onto the price, because I'll eat that up in a few months every year.
So is it, and forgive me, because this is quite detailed, and I think a lot of people listening will be really interested in what you've got to say. How do you make your money?
Yep, this is great. So we have, in the United States anyway, federally trademarked our 3 payday system, because for my first 18 years of business, like anyone else in real estate, I would do a deal or build a house or do a flip or even sell a house as a realtor and get a check, one check.
Right.
Okay. But now every January I got to do that again. So here's how we've mastered the 3 paydays. When we exit, remember, we exit a rent to own with a buyer that deserves to get in there and have a pathway.
Yeah.
Payday 1, non-refundable down payment, average 28-30 grand US.
Okay.
Payday 2, I'm making an underlying payment on that house to either a seller or a bank, and I'm getting that plus X back every month in a lease payment via that rent to own program from my buyer. So there's a spread. Payday 2. Payday 3, all of that principal pay down that I've been accruing the whole term, whether it's 1, 5, 10 years, and any markup I did in the price. So all 3 paydays for us as a family business doing our own deals averages around 75,000 US. Our students range from a low of 45 to a high of $250,000 per deal per all 3 paydays. So that's the difference.
A low of $45,000, which is almost the same in pounds, but basically, so you've got 40,000 quid up to, do you say $1 million? Did you say
250,000?
250,000.
Yeah, all 3 paydays.
Which is for one property.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But that's over a period of maybe, I don't know, so many years.
On average, 3 to 5. It can be 2 and it can be 10. But yeah, on average, a lot of these deals are going to be in that 3 to 5 year range.
So I was getting mixed up earlier, because the 30-year thing of hanging around for that long, it's just not going to be like that. It's more likely to be you're going to get the payout in a much quicker period.
Right. Exactly. Now, can the more advanced techniques, so I won't go too deep, but can a student, and do we all the time, take a deal after you have a portfolio now and you're okay financially, you have the bills paid? Can you look at your portfolio and say, I'm going to take that 3 or 5 year deal, I'm going to renegotiate that with the seller, and I'm going to turn that into a 10 or a 20. Sure. My building's a 20 year. Right? So there's ways to, I call it wealth stacking. There's ways to turn that short portfolio into a longer one once you get more advanced.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, so far, Kevin, this sounds like it's something of interest, isn't it?
Sounds interesting. So just check a few things here. We've got 3 parties to a typical deal. We've got the owner of the property, who's got the property with no loans on it or whatever. We've got the person who is now living in the property or running an office in a building. Okay. And we've got your student or yourself, Chris, who is effectively the agent pulling both parties together, correct?
Yeah, with the exception of in the US, an agent may be confused as a realtor. So yeah, we call them investors only. Yeah. But yes.
Yeah.
And not to say realtors can't also learn this, because they do, and they love it.
Yeah. So the capital is coming from the person who owns the property in the first place. You're not having to, as the person in the middle, you're not having to invest anything, but you're getting paydays coming in because you're accumulating money from the person who is living there. Okay. Okay, you said at the beginning that 95% of people that are going into this effectively rent to buy arrangement are going to buy.
Correct. Yeah.
The 5% that don't, who's carrying the risk?
Okay, good question. So let's paint a scenario. I have Graham's house I just purchased, and I'm placing Kevin in it as a buyer. And Kevin lost his job, he got divorced. Sorry, Kevin. All this stuff happened to him, and he had to leave the property, and he defaulted. It's as an investor, I'm still obligated on that property. So what are my options? Well, my options are many. One, no particular order. One, I resell it conventionally right away if the market is conducive for that. Two, if my term is long enough, I just put another rent-to-own buyer in it. Or three, I can extend the term with the seller, which happens a lot, and have plenty of time to put another tenant buyer in there to qualify. So there's a lot of ways to pivot. That's what I love about the technique.
So, okay, Kev, you bought my. Hold on, I'm not in the. You've bought my property. So you've actually. Do I, as the owner of the property, take? Forgive us for sort of learning this as we go through, because this is kind of, do I take them as the owner of the property? Do I get a chunk of money, all of the money of the house up front, and you manage that property thereafter? So you
actually, like same with my building or a house, you actually as the seller in an owner financing deal we've been talking about, you actually typically won't get anything down. Are there exceptions with tiny down? Yes. We'll pay the transfer tax if it's needed in that particular county or state, and then you'll get payments every single month.
So it's more about I've got a separate property, and you're just going to throw money month after month. So it's a nice. I mean, I could probably live on it. I mean, so
for sure. And then there is an end date, though. So if I structure a 5-year or a 10-year balloon, you're getting the rest. Then how? My buyer got financed, and we all cashed out.
Right. So your buyer at that point, bit like with a car hire type thing, where there's this balloon payment. So I like the car, I want to keep the car. Here's your 20,000 quid or whatever, and then you've got the car. So it's the same sort of idea, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So basically, at that point, then the owner, as was, no longer owns the house. It's the person that's in the house at that point. They've paid up, you've paid the owner, and in the meantime, you've made money. The buyer's been happy living in that property, a nice property, and the seller or the owner, happy days. But you're, in the meantime, making somewhere between 45,000 low end and $250,000 top end. And that's through the skill of that. Now, typically, how many houses would your typical student or give us an idea of the type of person that comes into your program? How many houses they're likely to have? Because maybe one isn't enough.
Yeah. Okay. So this will depend on like a major portion of our avatar right now. A major portion of the people coming to us are good income earners wanting to leave their JOB. Yeah. And so they tend to come in more aggressive if they're that avatar. And the more successful stories recently were in the 10 to 15 a year range as far as properties.
Yeah.
People doing it part-time and quite happy with that might do 2 to 6 in a year.
Well, if you believe Biden, and I don't, but you wouldn't be paying tax on that, then would you? Because you'd be earning over. Oh, sorry, you would be paying tax on that because basically it's over 400,000. But effectively, that kind of thing is, and that would be the minimum at each house. And you're not likely to have that. You're going to have a very, very nice income,
right?
Possibly up to £1 million, or at least not so much an income. I suppose at that point it's still turnover, isn't it? Because it'll be. Do you have to set up companies? Is that what you would do?
We do, and there's entities structuring, education outside of us that we send the students to so that they're set up properly, not just for tax reasons, but liability and asset protection as well, of course.
Right. So, I mean, your knowledge is so deep in this area. How many competitors do you have?
This is good. We just met yesterday. This is top of mind. We met yesterday with one of our strategic partners, and he said to us about 3 hours into it, he said, nobody's doing what you're doing. So they're selling stuff, albeit. Unfortunately, they're good marketers. And some of them will tell me, I just market. I don't care what happens. We don't care about that front end. We just want the education so we can do deals together, because now you're affecting families. And I think it was Kevin who said there's 3 parties. Yes. So we've now gone past 1,000 deals. That means there's 3,000 families that were touched, right? The 3 parties. That's something that, in my opinion, is exciting because it's generational wealth. If I showed someone how to get into a home they thought they never could buy, they're telling the kids and everybody else. So it's generational effect with this wealth and this home ownership. So competition-wise, we don't have many people. I can maybe think of one who's trying to do it in the States, but everybody else just sells product and doesn't care, frankly, if they do a deal. They don't.
That's really sad, because it seems that you're very focused on all 3 parties, and basically, well, certainly the other 2, shall we say? And I think that speaks volumes about your morals, if you like. So at the end of the day, you are there to make money, but but you do, and I suppose the reason that you make more money is because you care about the people that you're involved with.
Yeah, spot on. And we tend to attract, Graham, as we survey, we now have a great idea, right? Who comes to us? We tend to attract people that go, I love helping people. And like, they get emotional about it. Some of our students. So that's who we tend to attract. And because we're a family company, we do also tend to attract people that like that environment and are comfortable in their family environment.
And you said that your son's involved. Are other members of your family involved?
Son-in-law Zach, son Nick, my daughter Kayla. We have 2 grandkids now, but she's coming back in because they're getting a little bit older, and then it grew from there. Yeah.
Wow, it's a proper family business, that then, Kevin. I mean, you'll be doing the same, won't you?
It certainly is. Yeah, I love the idea of this, and there's still some things that are in the back of my mind that are saying, how does this all work? And you said that the person that is looking to buy the property, when they first take this on, would give you, the person in your position, Chris, a down payment.
Correct. Yep.
Now, if that person is struggling to go get the mortgage, the traditional finance, one of the criteria in that traditional finance is normally the percentage of the value of the property that they're prepared to loan against. So they're short on a deposit. So how does that work through into your scenario where you're effectively still asking them for that deposit?
Yeah, it's one and the same, if I'm understanding your question. So when a buyer comes in, and let's say the property is $500,000.
Yeah.
We want to make sure, my son is the one that runs this. We want to make sure that they truly, if they didn't have a credit issue or a seasoning issue we want to make sure they could afford it today. So if the bank requirement in that state was for 10% down, it wasn't a jumbo, for example, they're going to give us the 10%. They're going to source it still. They can't just have a gift of it. They're going to source it and they're going to document it. And so when they go to get their end loan, that's qualified for their down payment. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. So the money that they give you now effectively comes back to them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, got you. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And if it's a large, like we just did one on the water. You guys probably, when you came to New England, toured through Cape Cod. We just did one on the water down there and we sold it, but we required 20% down because the bank's we got to set them up to win in 3 years, not set them up to fail and be short. So either upfront or over the course of the term, they're going to come up with whatever the bank's going to require them by the end.
Right. So, okay. I'm in a position I want to buy a house now. I know the bank is going to want 20,000 down on it, but I've only got 15 at the moment. But I know where the other five's coming from over the course of the next 5 years. We can build that into the deal.
It's exactly what we do. At least half of the buyers, my son sits down and says, okay, do you have tax refunds coming yearly? Do you have raises or retroactive pay? Let's schedule that out so that you're all set by the end. And that's what they love. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other key question I'm going to hit, Chris, we're talking about the original owner of the property, who's going to remain the legal owner of the property right through to.
Sometimes. In an owner financing, I'm taking title.
Yeah.
Right.
They're just a bank.
Okay. You're taking.
So they churn.
Okay. So yeah. So they could no longer. That's why the property's got to be free of any loans in the first place.
In the owner financing case, I'd like rather, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So they turn from owner to bank.
Exactly, Graham.
And that's really, really important. But because the banks don't usually fail, do they? Well, I suppose that sometimes they do, but basically they tend to win on most things. So this is. Does it suggest that? I mean, you said that there's what 33% of the housing stock free and clear. So basically, you've got a fair amount of.
Oh yeah.
But, that doesn't necessarily. I mean, my house is free and clear. I don't pay a mortgage on my house anymore. But I mean, I've been here for 30 years plus, and so basically, that's all gone. Mortgages, but not every. But I'm not really free and clear because I'm actually living here. Don't have a second house. If I did, then and that had no finances attached to it, that's the house that I'm thinking about putting into this scheme. But I have to find you first. So how do you find me? Because it's more likely that that's going to happen than me find you. Because I wouldn't have thought of it.
Yeah, you're right. So we've two ways we find people to speak with. One is we were only talking about one method here this whole time, owner financing. And how do we find free and clear? You can purchase a list of free and clear, and it's actually online databases now. So simple to get.
Right.
The other methods that we help the students automate is they'll get a feed online every day of for sale by owners, expired listings they couldn't sell with a realtor, and for rent by owners. That's the three key lead sources. Only when and if they run out of leads or they're more aggressive and they want more and they want to expand do we then buy a list, say, of free and clear. But lists are extremely inexpensive. I'm talking $150, like small money to buy a list.
So the proposition is going to be put to them via email mainly, and effectively, by the way, we can do something with that free and clear property that's going to generate you wealth over the next 10 years. And especially kind of important because over the next 10 years, it's going to be a bit of a dodgy time in the economy. So therefore, there are people who are motivated to come towards you. And as long as the guys that you're coaching aren't, shall we say, too aggressive, then there's going to be a natural, and by the sound of it, you wouldn't really want them to be. You might want them to be eager, but I mean, otherwise, wouldn't it turn people off?
Yeah, you chase them away. What we teach is this is not about chasing or selling. In fact, you will chase them away. Yeah. This is about finding out what their problem and or goal is that they can't do conventionally. That's it. And if it's, here's an example. I speak with Kevin and I say, Kevin, if I can get you to your price, are you open to owner financing and waiting over time? No, my family and I need to cash this out and go buy another house tomorrow. I have to do that. Okay, I'm not your buyer. This is so simple. So we're just looking for people we can help, and those that we can't, it's okay.
Okay. The key thing for me here is that you mentioned that this is just one of the ways in which you can actually do this thing. Right. What are just remind me of the other two?
Sure. This one is a lease purchase where, to Kevin's earlier question, title does not transfer. I just control the property, the lease, and then I do a rent to own. We call that a sandwich because I'm in the middle, a sandwich lease. There's only one state in the entire United States you can't do that. And the other method is called subject to existing financing. So unlike free and clear, And unlike the avatar of a free and clear financially being okay, a subject to existing financing usually is, I'm in trouble. I can't pay the mortgage. I have 2 homes and I just can't make it work anymore. I need relief right away. So I sell my house to the investor and the loan stays in my name still. That's what subject to existing financing means.
Right.
So those are 3 methods.
Right. Okay. So you teach these methods to what people all over the world. So most will be local, won't they? Most will be in the United States.
Yeah, we have about 95% of our people in the States and a scattering of, I was telling Kevin, Canada, Australia, UK. Tends to be very similar transactions.
Okay, that's interesting. That people in the UK can actually do something similar to this.
Yep.
Is there any nuances with other territories? Because to be honest with you, our lead listenership is basically English speaking countries, but not all, but many of them are. And so, is this something that you've noticed about the UK market as distinct from the United States market?
No, other than just like if I jump to different states, there's going to be an attorney that helps us out with, there's some nuances here and here's what. Other than that, so you just turn to the attorneys at that point for advice. But right. No, I mean, we've got very, very good friends from past businesses in Bermuda, for example. Right. And could they do that there? Sure. You can do this with boats, planes, cars, homes. It doesn't matter what asset, right?
Yeah. And actually have some of your coached, I mean, what do you call them? Coachees? I don't know. I mean, the people that you've coached.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably call them sir or madam, I suppose, but I don't know. I mean, you've made them all very wealthy by the sound of it.
Some. We're getting there, Graham. That's the mission.
And actually, like most things, it's the ones that put effort into 100%. The program. They're the ones who are going to benefit.
Right, 100%.
Chris, is there another model in here where there are investors around that say, well, hang on a minute, I want to have a property portfolio. I want to do something, but hang on, if I want to get into this, well, I don't have 250,000 or whatever to buy a property, but I'd really like to be in this position of being able to support a family who has a problem at the moment, wants to buy later. Mm-hmm. Is there any way that you're taking several investors together, pooling their resources to buy property to go into that marketplace?
If they want to be more passive, for example? Yeah. So through accountants that we have and attorneys, we do have people that call us and say, look, I don't want to do in the trenches what you do, but I love your model. Can I go ahead and invest passively? And sure we can, because then we go and we use that to get more aggressive with our purchase and still do a rent to own. So yeah, there are people who passively invest with us too.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
I mean, Kevin, Chris, inevitably this has been slightly more technical than certainly I'm used to keeping up with. I find it all very difficult now. Even I've got an MBA. I'm fairly, free and clear. But I'm free and clear of education, I suppose, now because it's all sort of gone behind me. But I love the podcast because you're learning new things all the time. And I think the essence of this, I think you've got across really successfully. From the type of person that you're looking for. I mean, if we just think about the UK, but in the United States and other parts of the avatar, give us a better idea of your avatar, because it might be that the listener says, oh, that's me.
Yeah. Very good. Because I'm pretty dialed in on this. I'll give you like top 3 or 4 that come to mind. One I mentioned or I alluded to earlier, they're in a nice 5 or 6 figure yearly earning job and they're tired of it, especially after COVID. I'm done with it. Okay. Yeah. So they tend to be great because they're not relying on a deal tomorrow to live. Yeah. They can make that run to be a business owner. Yeah. Second, I know no order, of course, but second, sort of avid learners. That's why I do so many interviews like this, because people that tend to listen to a podcast, invested time to listen to a podcast, they're trying to learn. And they tend to be always constantly learning. They're great. Third, people who either watched a family company grew somewhere in their world, or they were part of a family company. They always wanted one. They tend to gravitate towards us. Those three are really popular. And the last one can be more difficult, but it tends to be where I came from in 08. And that was, they got beat up, but they didn't put their head in the sand, and they really want it badly. And they're okay. They have a means to get there in the next 6 months, and they're hungry and they're willing to learn.
And if I was that person and I like the idea of this, how much do I need to sort of put out before I start getting money back?
That would depend. See, some people just go through our online platform, what we call our QLS home study course, Quantum Leap System, and they go off and do deals, and we don't hear from them, or they show up only at the live events. And that's under $1,500. That's not a large outlay. Others say, I'd rather have you on my shoulder, and I want one of the myriad of different coaching levels you have that are more hands-on. And then that would just be custom fit to who they are, their financial means, how fast they want to go, frankly. So there's different levels of hands-on after that.
And typically, and I know you've answered this elsewhere because I kind of did a little bit of research, but basically, how long does it normally take before, all right, okay, I've got trained now. First deal is 3 months, 2 months?
Well, here's my broad answer, because everyone wants to know this. We teach the same course, yet some people can come out of the gate and do a deal in 30 or 40 days, and some take a year. And so people go, oh, why? Because everybody comes to the table with a different skill set or lack thereof, baggage or lack thereof, So until I meet them, I don't know. But the average is going to be somewhere bet on in your mind for expectations. Think about 4 to 6 months so you don't beat yourself up.
I've just noticed that on your T-shirt, you've really got many of our listeners. Plan your escape. Presumably that's from corporate.
Corporate, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that Kevin and I have both done, and others who we've had on as guests, but also listeners. They're in that market, so I think you're probably in the right place. We're not the BBC, but then again, we never would be because we're not politically correct. Well, at least I'm not. I speak Kevin, as you see.
But yeah, Graham, we featured corporate escape stories again and again on the podcast. And this is certainly a very different time. Normally, we've got a guest who's fed up with their job, went out to set their own business up, being a consultant or a coach or whatever, to do it themselves. This is a very different model of getting out of corporate. Now, Graham asked a minute ago, Chris, about cost, and you were talking very much about the cost of your courses, your coaching. Mm-hmm. Now, if somebody's going down that route, is there any upfront cost to them apart from paying for the tuition and the advice? Is there, do you need any deposits in there, any money to pay attorneys and so on before you're going to get your money back? Do you need some working capital?
There are some things in the ideal world that I would say would be an easier start. And that would be, number one, a website. It does come with some of our levels, but doesn't come with all. So a website. Number two, the tools that I mentioned that generate the leads, you're talking $80 or $90 a month, but that's a cost, right? Of doing business. And then proper entity setup. Within 90 days or so, you're going to have that cost with an attorney. But all that, you're talking under $5,000, $6,000 to do it ideal and not do it in piecemeal as you go, which you can do.
So this is a business model that if you want a corporate escape, you can very easily bootstrap this new company yourself.
Oh, yeah, I did. That's how. So I like to teach people how. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, Kevin, and Chris, you've been fantastic. And
I appreciate it.
I think you've whetted the appetite of many listeners because, at the end of the day, this is something you can start doing when you're in corporate. It's something you potentially could start doing when you're in retirement. So, and I'm not so far off that. But, Kevin, he looks like he's retired now, to be honest with you. But he still turns up.
I wish.
Like a lot of people in jobs, they retire before they finish their job, don't they? But what can I say?
There's some great stuff in here, Chris. So we'll make sure that in the show notes we've got a link through to you and your site and all of your various offers.
I appreciate that.
But I think there's something that for the right person, there's something that's very, very interesting in here.
Well, Chris, I'm going to say it properly. I am going to say it properly. Chris Prefontaine, thank you very much indeed for being a guest on the Next 100 Days podcast.
You guys are great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Graham, there's a model there that I'd never given any thought to at all. No, it's another route of corporate escaping, and it's another thing. If you're stuck in corporate and you want to get out of there, there's a solid strategy you can take in the next 100 days.
Yeah, very much. And I think what Chris has got there is a very caring, focused business that basically at its heart is there to help people. And I think that is the sort of thing that we should be considering when it comes to what we want to do with our lives. If it's just about buying and selling houses and all that kind of stuff, then that's one thing. But the key thing here is he's really there to actually help people. He's got his own family business. Seems to be a really nice bloke. I mean, yes, it's all about selling things ultimately, but there's a purpose and there's positive outcomes for people, putting people into houses that they'll hopefully cherish for a long time.
Well, that's it. It is all about purpose. I'm reflecting back on the whole series that we've done that have broadly had a theme of doing business with the affluent. And now, how often has it come up that you need somebody with considerable resources to help you do business with somebody that's at possibly far, far lower down the money pyramid? That seems just such a normal model in what we're looking at here. And this particular case, you've got the person that owned the property in the first place is probably fairly well up the pyramid. The person that needs a property is probably lower in that pyramid than they actually want to be or they aspire to be. And you've got the business bringing the two together.
Well, if you can actually invest in properties and you can scale, automate their businesses, all without using your own cash, credit, or taking out bank loans to buy property, then you're in a pretty interesting market, aren't you? So I think
very interesting market.
I think if you're interested, then we actually have a link in the show notes that you can click on and to find out more information. So do take that opportunity of getting in touch with the smart real estate coach. That's Chris Prefontaine. So Kevin, today
that's a sign of old age, Graham. When you
I know what can I say?
Your co-host name wrong.
Yeah, I forgot my own name. But today I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
I've been Kevin Appleby. Goodbye.
Goodbye.